Jumping over to Australia, because I know we got a few people in Australia, so this is probably something to pay attention to. It says which you guys already probably know. I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't already know, so you probably know more about it than I do. But still, this is for the rest of us hooligans out here that don't live there. Australia orders tech giants to enforce age verification digital ID by December 10th. So we knew this was coming. They announced this a while ago, but it looks like they slapped the final date on here saying you better get going. It says Australia is preparing to enforce one of the most invasive online measures in its history under the guise of child safety. Always the child safety. We see that happening in Australia. We see it happening in Europe. We see it happening in the United States. It's about protecting the kids. Well, how are you going to protect the kids? By taking away your privacy and your rights and your freedom and your thoughts. And that's how they're doing it. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to pull at your heartstrings. We got to protect the kids, even though we don't give a rip about the kids. We sacrifice them to Satan for whatever reason that we want to, but we're going to make sure that you feel bad if you don't support what we're doing because you don't care about the kids at that point. It's just reverse psychology. With the introduction of mandatory age verification across social media platforms, privacy advocates are warning that the policy set to begin December 10th, 2025, risks eroding fundamental digital rights for every user, not just those under 16. E-Safety Commissioner Julie Inman Grant has told tech giants like Google, Meta, TikTok, and Snap that they must be ready to detect and shut down accounts held by Australians under the age threshold. That's right. You must verify that you are 16 or older. If you are not, no social media for you. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing. Wait for a second. I don't think it's a bad thing to have people off social media. I've said social media is a poison pit filled with venomous vipers, and I praise the Lord that I don't have social media because I've seen what it does. I see what happens. I see it on YouTube comments. Nothing good comes from it. However, I still hold to the belief that it's your right as a parent, if you want your kid to have it or not. So I don't believe that they should be doing this, but I also still hold to the belief that social media is a toxic dump. Remember, both things can be right at the same time. She has made it clear that platforms are expected to implement broad age assurance systems across their services and that self-declaration of age will not on its own be enough to constitute reasonable steps. The new rules stem from the Online Safety Amendment, Social Media Minimum Age Act of 2024, which gives the government sweeping new authority to dictate how users verify their age before accessing digital services. Any platform that does not comply could be fined up to $31 million. While the government claims that the law isn't a ban on social media for children under 16, then what is it? In practice, it forces platforms to block these users unless they can pass age checks which means a digital ID. There will be no penalties for children or their parents, but platforms face immense legal and financial pressure to enforce restrictions. Pressure that almost inevitably leads to surveillance-based systems. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It says the commissioner said companies must detect and deactivate these accounts from the 10th of December and provide account holders with appropriate information and support before then. You guys can go further on that if you want to. Even if you're not in Australia, it's probably a good idea to get caught up with what all this thing is. Because I'm telling you, we've seen indicators that this stuff is coming here in the United States. We saw Mississippi doing what they're doing, which if you're not paying attention to what's going on with the whole online age verification with Mississippi, there's a whole big back and forth with a whole bunch of different parties that are going to war regarding that. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to the COSA bill that they just reintroduced for like the third time that they're trying to get going on that. And then there's another one. There's the Screen Act as well. That's another one to pay attention to as well. It's very similar to what we see in Australia, very similar to what we just saw happen in the UK as well. So be paying attention to that. Now, with that, Cindy J says up to 31 million US dollars, and that would be for the company. That's not for the user. So that would be for the company that doesn't follow the rules. But one of the things that's worth paying attention to, because if these companies don't follow suit, they may start pulling out of Australia. And the reaction may not be good, because we got something very interesting happening in Nepal for what they're trying to do, because Nepal put in a rule that said that these social media companies, these apps, must register with the state, with the country, otherwise they'll be banned. And pretty much none of them did it. WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Instagram, and a list of 26 other social media apps were banned in Nepal. Now we're going to try and go through this because this is interesting. It says Nepal had banned 26 major social media apps, including Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, after they failed to register with the government. The ban has sparked a Gen Z revolution, as they're calling it, with student-led protests erupting across Kathmandu. And so these were all the ones that didn't register, like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Reddit, Discord, Signal, WeChat, Tumblr, Rumble, all these ones like that. And what this did is this was basically the last straw for the people in Nepal. There's a lot of reports out there saying it's because they banned these apps that all of a sudden all these Gen Z kids are rising up and rioting because of this. That's not what's going on. If you actually look into it, there's been a giant wave, massive wave of corruption, just the state police just murdering people, just they're sticking their thumb on these people, absolutely just taking control of people's lives and whatnot. And then they went and did this, which means they have no way of broadcasting this stuff out or communicating with anybody outside their country. And that's what sparked the final straw. It wasn't, oh, they banned social media, so we're going to go and start causing problems. This has been something that has been building up for a long, long time. Now, because of that, it's been pretty bad the past few days in Nepal. Nepal parliament set on fire as the prime minister resigns over anti-corruption protests. The entire parliament building is toast. They burned the entire thing. It's gone. They went and started burning all of the politicians' homes because of what's going on. The prime minister stepped down. The ban was lifted, so all the social media and stuff is still there. And it's been clashes. People have been killed. There's been riots going on everywhere. I think over 100 people have been killed so far because of what's going on. That's the early stages of them burning the parliament building. Like I said, it's gone now. It's doesn't exist anymore. And it's become a massive situation over there, including the wife of an ex-Nepali prime minister burned alive. Some of the politicians that were involved with the Nepali government, you can see that they were stripped and flogged and carried through the streets because of the corruption that's been happening, because of how bad that the government has been treating the people. There is a lot of stuff that's been going on, and nobody hears about Nepal. Nobody hears about Nepal. It's just one of those small little countries that everybody forgets about. But for the people who live there, they know what's going on, and they are dealing with a lot of things over there. So that social media thing was just the final straw, so to say. I always bring this forward because I think this is important to remember, because I see this all the time where people are saying, why don't we do that here in the Western world? Why don't we rise up? Whether it's like Australia or here in the United States or so on and so forth. Why don't we rise up? Because we've got it too comfortable, man. We've got it too comfortable here. The people in these countries that are revolting the way that they are, and I'm not even considering like what you see in like France. If you guys don't know, France's government fell again, which is like the 4th time in 2 years or something like that. But even their riots are picnics compared to what we see like in Nepal and some of these other countries, because these people have very little as it is. They're not in a good spot. And when they get pushed too far, they don't have lives anymore. They have no choice. And so they start rising up like this. Here in the Western world, too comfortable. We got grocery stores available. We got sports on every channel year round. We've got all this stuff going on. And you think anybody's going to give that up? They're not going to give it up. So it's going to be a little easier for them to control us here in the Western world. It's going to take a little maneuvering over in those other countries in order to get their stuff rolling as well. So that's why these are different situations for different locations on that. Okay, let's keep going. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay. Now I got a few more things. So we got this one. This is worth paying attention to as well. This could be interesting. We don't necessarily have too much detail on it as of yet, but I do want to make you guys aware. So again, if you guys see anything in response to this, in regards to this, send it my way. I'm only one dude with two eyeballs. I can only keep my eyes on so many things, but this is worth keeping tabs on. It says the Supreme Court fight that could decide who gets to stay online. Tech giants and civil liberty groups are urging the court to reject a ruling that weaponizes copyright law against everyday internet users. I don't know how many people are involved with this, but there's been a major issue happening when it comes to fair use and copyright infringement when it comes to things like YouTube and whatnot. There are people who, they're like music teachers and whatnot, who teach music on YouTube for people. And they have to play songs. They have to play certain sections of songs and whatnot in order to help teach people. It's vocals, instruments, whatever it is. And they used to be able to put fair use on it because it was educational. They were teaching something. And now, all of a sudden, YouTube has stopped enforcing fair use. And these companies, these big companies, are going in and copywriting everything, which means the teachers who are literally teaching music for free because they were getting paid through views on their videos are no longer getting paid for that, which means if they don't start getting their fair use payments back, they're not going to be able to do it anymore, which means we're now going to start losing free teaching of music, which music is a very important thing that I think most kids should at least look into. It's just like I think most kids should play a sport or something. It's something when you're growing up, helps build character, helps you develop how to learn and discipline and all those types of things. But all that's going to go away because all of a sudden, this copyright stuff is YouTube's not enforcing fair use anymore. And there's a whole bunch of that going on right now. It's been happening the past month and a half. It's become a serious problem. And now we have this coming out, which this could make things even worse. It says a lineup of civil liberty organizations, technology companies, and internet freedom advocates have filed briefs supporting Cox Communications in a closely watched Supreme Court case that could dramatically alter how internet service providers respond to copyright complaints. The case, Cox Communications versus Sony Music Entertainment, asks whether ISPs, internet service providers, must terminate internet service to users accused but not convicted of piracy. If a company decides that a person is violating the copyright system, they can tell the internet service provider to shut off internet to that person, even though they may never were convicted, gone through trial or due process or anything. That's what this is. So if we've already got an issue where these people aren't even getting their fair use, which is legal, it is law in the United States, even if they're not getting that all of a sudden, that means this is the next step, to start shutting off the internet of these people. Supreme Court's upcoming decision is one of the most consequential internet-related cases in years, not just for copyright law, but also the future of how people access the internet in the United States. At stake is a fundamental question. Can internet service providers be held liable and forced to cut off internet access to users simply because they've been accused of copyright infringement without any judicial process or proof? Those standing with Cox include the Electronic Frontier Foundation, American Civil Liberties Union, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Mozilla, Pinterest, and X. So even some of these globalist groups are actually standing against this thing. And that's a good thing. Against this ruling is a good thing because we don't want this implemented. And so we even have some of these people that are doing it. So that's pretty interesting that's happening there. Cox argues that the Fourth Circuit's ruling, which held it liable for contributory infringement and ordered a new damages trial, created an untenable standard that would force ISPs to police user activity under the threat of billion-dollar judgments. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you guys can go and read on that if you want to, but I think we get the idea of what this is. So, I'm asking you guys, if you see anything coming out more about this, send it my way. This is something that we absolutely need to be watching. I have multiple videos on my YouTube channel that have been hit by copyright. Multiple. So who's to say all of a sudden my internet doesn't get shut off if this thing goes through? Because I used a clip from something in a video that's under fair use, but they don't care. They still hit it with copyright. And so that's something to think about. And because the system is so jacked up that there's times where you don't even need to be the owner of the content that you're putting a copyright claim on. I've had multiple times from companies that are just random companies that don't have any connection to the video that I used, and they put a copyright on there, and YouTube said, yep, it's all good. Even though that person doesn't have to show that they own it, doesn't have to show that it's their content, doesn't have to do anything, but it falls on me to try and disprove it. And if I go and appeal that, all that person has to do is go decline, and they still maintain that even though they don't actually own it. So this is what we're up against. So this could be very interesting. So I urge you guys, keep track of what's going on with that. Then we have this. It just keeps getting better. Just keeps getting better. Josh Hawley proposes AI regulations, Section 230 repeal, and digital ID checks for chat bots. You know how I keep saying two things can be right at the same time? Should we be involved with AI chatbots? I don't think we should. But I also don't think that we should be implementing digital ID checks to use one either. Both can be right at the same time. If you disagree, that's fine. But that's where I stand. Age checks for chatbots may sound parental, but they flirt with surveillance state mechanics. Exactly. Senator Josh Hawley is pushing for broad new regulations on artificial intelligence, including age verification for chatbot access, data ownership rights, and full repeal of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. While the proposals are framed as efforts to curb corporate overreach in the tech industry, they will ignite concern among digital rights advocates who warn that such measures could undermine online privacy and freedom of expression. At the National Conservatism Conference, Hawley accused AI developers of building their systems by collecting and using copyrighted materials without their permissions. We start getting into the copyright system right there. Now, AI, again, what they do is they go and scrape all the data up, and then they can regurgitate it out at that point because they take the work of other people. Now, that's a problem in itself. But again, we start getting into what is fair use and so on and so forth. How is it being used? Those are questions that I don't have answers for. I'm not smart enough for that type of thing. But there's definitely an issue with how AI collects and uses stuff. I will agree with that. The AI large language models have already trained on enough copyrighted works to fill the Library of Congress 20 times over. Let me put a finer point on that. AI's large language models have ingested every published work in every language known to man already. He claimed that creators were neither consulted nor compensated. In July, Hawley introduced the AI Accountability and Personal Data Protection Act, which would allow individuals to sue companies that use personal data without consent and would establish property rights over certain categories of digital information. Again, that is a whole section of legal stuff that I really don't know much about, so I'm not going to comment on that. I do, again, as I said before, there's a lot of stuff going on between people's work and content and what AI does with it that I believe that there's problems there. But again, I'm not smart enough and well-versed enough to even get into that conversation. However, two key components of Hawley's platforms are raising some alarm. His call to repeal Section 230 has been criticized for potentially damaging the open internet. Section 230 currently shields online platforms from legal liability for content created by users. We're starting to see a crossover here, small crossover between what he's trying to do here and what the SCOTUS is currently looking at when it comes to the copyright system and the ISPs. Have you guys noticed that? Two things happening at the same time that are involving the same issue. That's worth keeping tabs on. Without it, many sites could be forced to preemptively remove user content out of legal risk, resulting in widespread over-moderation and silencing of lawful speech. And then there's the other aspect. Another proposal would require users to verify their age before interacting with AI chatbots. While promoted as a child safety measure, protect the kids. Again, remember, the implementation of such a requirement could lead to the normalization of digital ID systems. Keep in mind that Josh Hawley multiple times has been leading the charge on new legislation to get digital ID law online for kid safety. He wants this digital ID system. He wants this surveillance state, and he's using kids in order to make it happen. These systems would likely require users to submit personal documents or biometric data to access basic online tools, reducing the ability to be online, increasing the risk of surveillance or data breaches. This is not the first time that he's been pushing for digital ID, and I can guarantee it will not be the last time either. So, again, it's the push here in the United States for digital online verification and digital IDs and stuff like that is becoming more and more relevant. And it's going to do that, especially when we see what's going on in Europe and Australia and so on and so forth. That stuff is coming here eventually.